Well, after a couple of weeks' break, we like to say it's for school holidays, but really that's got nothing to do with it. We've just been in rehab. We're back with the Variety Hour podcast. I'm Sergio Paradise. He is the Ninja Warrior, Titus O'Reilly. And I nearly didn't make it in here this morning to Studio Titus. I got stopped halfway here with a booze bus and a drug bus.
Well, differently or at the same time?
At the same time. It was in here and first do this one. And
do they just follow you now?
and then I just want to say, if you hear any reports of ramming or carjacking, it's not true. Okay.
So they tested you for both?
Both, yeah.
Where was this?
This was in just off Hoddle Street in sort of Collingwood area of Melbourne.
Right.
So I don't know if there's been a bit of action going on up that way.
And they got you to blow into the bag,
blow into the little machine, which I've done before over the journey, but I've never had the drug thing where you got to scrape the inside of your mouth with this sort of plastic thing that looks like.
And so when do you get your license back?
Well, I did leave in a bit of a hurry.
Was everyone in shock when you passed?
Yeah, I think they were, especially since like that guy in Texas who was. You see, he was stopped on the weekend. They found in his car an open container of whiskey, a rattlesnake, and a quantity of radioactive uranium powder.
Really?
Yeah, and then the cop the head of the chief of police was interviewed about it, and he said there are still quite a few questions to be answered.
Yeah. What did they say? Anything about what the uranium powder was?
No, he claimed up this guy. He wouldn't tell him.
The kids and the uranium powder.
He said the rattlesnake was a
live
pet.
rattlesnake.
Yeah, live rattlesnake. It was a pet, and he did say, "Yeah, I probably shouldn't have been drinking the whiskey straight out of the bottle while I was driving."
That was the worst
That's
bit
a giveaway,
about all this.
yeah. But so the radioactive uranium powder, I hope to beat all charges.
I don't want a uranium powder near a rattlesnake. It's like the beginning of a bad Samuel L. Jackson movie.
It's like a Spider-Man,
bitten by a radioactive rattlesnake. What I love how in America, whenever you get caught, they call it a container of alcohol,
an open container.
Yeah, they always do that. I've seen
even if it's just a can of beer, it's still an open container of alcohol. Yeah,
bizarre.
And it's not a Tupperware container full of radioactive uranium. Yeah, it's a quantity.
So radioactive uranium powder, which I assume is always radioactive. An open bottle of whiskey.
Yeah. And a live rattlesnake. Oh, and there's a bit of crystal meth involved as well.
Any weapons?
No, apparently not, other than the rattlesnake.
Weird in America.
Well, I think that was the plan
all
for
the
the
best
uranium.
of Brendan Favola's American road trip. We should add, before we get down to...
And there's a fair bit of news going on.
There's a bit. We just gotten word that Alan Richardson's resigned, but we'll get to that in 1 second. Before that, we should mention some dates we've got coming up for various things. Now, I'm going on tour over a period of time, so it's not all in one week.
Do you want to buy him a rattlesnake?
I'll be touring with my rattlesnake and my uranium powder. So I got a couple of dates. These are about to go on sale in the next, later today, I think. So it's Tuesday today, the 16th of July. So it's about to go on sale soon. I'll put a link in the bio and everything. But I'm going to be in Canberra at the Street Theatre on the 10th of August, which is a Saturday night. I think there's a Giants game in Canberra on the Friday.
Is there? Okay.
I might get up to that. I'm going to be in Adelaide at the Arca Hotel on the 22nd of August, which is a Thursday night. So that's the 22nd of August in Adelaide.
Are you supporting the choir boys at the Arca?
I was actually at the Arca for a function I did a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so, it's a great joint. I mean, it's straight out of the 80s.
Yeah, it's actually always a good crowd there. Friday, 30th of August, I'm in Sydney at the Comedy Store. I get up there once every year, so it's always good for that gig, so that would be fun. The Octagon Theatre in Perth on the 31st of August, which is a Saturday. The 12th of August, which is a Saturday, I'm going down to Joker's Comedy Club in Hobart, which is always fun.
There you go.
And the Saturday, 19th of October, I'm going to be at the Sit Down Comedy Club in Brisbane.
And that's a great spot.
And we should also mention that for Melbourne, now I've already done the Comedy Festival in Melbourne. I think I did 23 nights in Melbourne, so Melbourne will probably
So if if they missed you at the comedy festival, they have no excuse.
Yeah,
23 nights. You had your opportunity. Yeah.
But we are going to do instead a live podcast in Melbourne on the 25th
Sunday,
of
the 25th.
August. Which will be fun. So come on down to that. That'll be. We'll have more details with that. Now tickets for that aren't yet all like on sale or anything. But it'll be I think we're Comics Lounge.
At the Comics Lounge in North Melbourne, which is a great spot.
So it should be about 2:00 on a Sunday, live podcast recording. So and we'll do extra things for that too. So we'll have details for that soon. So they're all a bunch of dates. You can go to Frontier Touring for all my dates I just announced before then, and then we'll soon have details for the podcast.
Massive.
So that'll be fun. I enjoy getting around, like just talking to all the different fans in every state. And we all have the exact same complaints about everything.
Yeah, everyone agrees. That's the thing. I mean, all you can do is walk onto a stage with a microphone in your hand and bag everything to do with football.
Bag the AFL, basically.
Bag the AFL, and you've got the crowd in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. So for those who've seen me, this is a new show I'm bringing around to the interstate one. So that people who have seen me before, it's all new stuff. Now, we've got a heap to talk about in sport, but we should mention just quickly the news came through. Alan Richardson has apparently, they're saying he resigned.
I don't believe that for a second.
Well, they're saying he resigned. So the story is, and this has just happened, the story apparently, which St Kilda have said, is they had a conversation with Richardson and said, you won't be coaching us next year.
Yeah.
In response, he said, well, I'll resign now then, rather than see out the rest of the year. And Brett Ratton's been appointed as caretaker coach.
Specialist caretaker coach,
Specialist caretaker coach. So that's basically what's happened at St Kilda. What do you reckon? Do you reckon, I mean, we all sort of knew he appeared to be done.
Yeah. I think he's been a bit stiff, but they just didn't really get the job done this year, St Kilda. And
they had a lot of injuries, though.
Yeah, but
I feel like out of all the things,
like
Bolton, you look at now and go, he really, the players weren't listening to him.
Yeah.
He didn't have the club, like, from what I hear, he was very deep. Like, he just had a way of doing things and he was obsessive and no one saw, like, his coaching stuff and everything weren't really behind him by the end, neither were the players. So you look at David Teague come in, and he's genuinely turned them around.
He's got them around. And the same with Brad Scott and Rhys Shaw.
Yeah, and you think I think with Brad, the players had stopped listening to him, whatever you think of him as a coach. So then I think, but with Alan, I feel less that he's just done a horrendous job. I mean, they haven't developed in many ways, but you also look at it and go, they've had a lot of injuries, and
I reckon the list is a bit.
It's been a bit overrated, I reckon. You know, like people to me, what summed up St Kilda this year was when St Kilda fans were like keen on Jake Carlisle returning. If that's the thing you're looking forward to.
Yeah, exactly that.
So
and Dan Hanbury playing back-to-back games, you know.
Do you have a lot of faith in Simon Lethlean getting the ball rolling in the right direction?
I just saw on Twitter in the last half hour, our good mate Racetrack Ralphie said that he'd heard that Alan Richardson had stepped down as Simon Lethlean's assistant coach.
Who has?
Alan Richardson stepped down as Simon Lethlean's assistant coach because that was not a good look the last couple of weeks, right, with Lethlean.
But apparently he's been in the box since the start of the year because I looked at that and went, that is weird. But then
somebody took a photo of it and it suddenly looked like, there's
I tell you what, Racetrack Ralphie's had a fun few weeks.
Oh, hasn't he just?
While we were away, with the Dane Swan, Scott Cummings and the blow. I tell you what, I don't know what I found more intense. The comments and the reaction, or then Ralphie's next 48 hours on Twitter.
48 hours? 48 days.
His tweet per minute ratio was like one of
the
highest I've ever seen.
If you got paid by words per minute, yeah.
It just shows you our ability to steer through controversy.
Yeah, well, I think we'll steer clear of the Urban Dictionary from now on. I see. Until that controversy with their podcast the other week, I'd never even heard of the Urban Dictionary.
Oh, really?
And then started looking it up, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be a recipe for disaster.
I know. I wasn't sure what I was more shocked by is one people who seem shocked by that's what that podcast would talk about. Like you look at it and you go, Dane Swan, Ralphie, and Scott Cummings. Yeah. Like it's going to be like that. Like it's exactly what I would have expected. Yeah. So I wasn't really. I was surprised people were surprised by that, but I was also surprised that Ralphie and Swan and that seemed surprised by the backlash.
Yeah,
I think both were the most predictable series. I
must admit, I listened to the so-called offending episode. Yeah, after all this blew up, and I thought, I'm not really sure what all the fuss is about because, I mean, honestly, they didn't present themselves as reviewing the latest Disney Pixar movie, so.
Oh, I thought that's how it all got started.
And next week, Swanee reviews The Lion King.
I'm sad they're gone just as they were the canary in the coal mine for us of where not to go. So we'll stay off Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, we will.
So Richo's gone. It brings up some other things. I mean, coaches this year, I tell you what, Simon Goodwin will want to have a good year next year.
Oh, I'll tell you what, yeah. I mean, they wouldn't want to be much worse, Melbourne, for the last 6 or 7 games than they have been so far.
Well, with McDonald out and everything, I
can't see them doing much more.
They can't kick into a forward line. We should also add, we've had Reece Shaw looking like becoming permanent. Now, I reckon Longmire choosing Sydney was a big benefit for North.
Oh, no question. No question, because it was a big benefit for John Longmire too, because
he just drove his price up.
He suddenly drove his price up and got himself an extra 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And North gone, we've got Reece Shaw seems to be doing such a good job, and he'll be a third of the price of Johnny Longmire. So it seems that North have still got most of their war chest available.
Well, that war chest.
What are they going to spend it on now?
I mean, if they put that into like the share market, that'd be the richest club.
Or buy some pokies or something.
Yeah, that's right. There have been
works for Hawthorn.
But Shaw seems to have been doing enough to at least, give him a try. It's more also like the thing is, who's the alternative? Like they're all untested. Shaw's untested, and look, in 2 years from now, we could be saying Shaw was a complete bust. Like this was a brief. It's the longevity that's the hard thing in coaching. The other one we should mention is, and there were some comments about this today, that sort of Teague, David Teague just keeps showing that, he's revolutionised at Carlton. He's rebuilt it in like 5 weeks.
Yeah.
He's taken it from being, like, they were an absolute joke.
But they really were.
They were all, Gold Coast were ahead of them on the ladder.
They were an absolute joke. But you still looked at their side on paper and go, you tell you what, they've still got some good players out there.
That's right. They were a side that were a lot worse than their list suggested. Yeah. Not that I think they would have been like, an amazing side, but they've now, they've only lost, he's got a record of 3-2 and the 2 losses have been close.
Yeah.
They could have really...
Well, 6 weeks ago, people were screaming for Jack Silvani to be delisted.
Yeah.
And now he's like, the next captain. He has been playing some good footy last
So the other thing that's been interesting with Teague winning up in Sydney, which is, even though Swans haven't been great, that's still hard to do.
Yeah.
Chris Judd's comments the week before that they were... what's been funny, because Judd has commented on this today. He said on Footy Classified that they were looking for a coach without training wheels.
Yeah.
So a coach with
an experienced coach.
Blah, blah, blah. And it was read very much by everyone as saying that Teague wasn't going to get it.
A reasonable assumption, you would have thought.
To the point where the club came back and tried to walk back the comments a little bit.
Yeah.
So Judd has now come out and said today...
what's he said today?
That he needs to get better as a media performer because he's on that show. He's up against 3 experienced gotcha journalists, and they got him by putting him on the spot and making his comments seem like they weren't endorsing Teague.
I'm not sure you'd call Matthew Lloyd a gotcha journalist.
He's outwitted by Matthew Lloyd.
He's a
few people have admitted that.
He's a good forward line coach at schoolboy level, but I wouldn't call him a gotcha journalist.
So Judd's gone, oh no, totally it was misreported and misconstrued by the media. I had to ring Teague, and I'm like, he said, I meant like, it could have got the experience at a below AFL level.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, mate, I watched that clip.
Yeah, I was watching that night too.
It wasn't a gotcha. You just came out and said it.
Yeah.
And then, to then pretend that we all got it wrong, which is the ultimate insult when someone says something and then gets a negative backlash.
Yeah.
And instead of going, I shouldn't have said it, or they pretend they don't say, I misspoke. I mean, he said he could have been clearer. But then he goes, everyone just misconstrued it. And it's like, mate, no.
Yeah, and it's like, they can't say, my comments were taken out of context.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they weren't. I heard you say them. I know what exactly got context.
Yeah, I mean, it's like whenever someone says about context, it's never like, where you go back and listen to the context and it's them saying, if I did say something like this, it would be bad. It's never that.
So what's... let's assume that Carlton maybe do bite the bullet and give Teague the senior job. What's Juddy's role there? Is he any good as a football director? I mean, the jury's obviously still out.
I mean, my view on this in the main, and there are exceptions that I think, are rare, say Lee Matthews or something, but the amount of times that just because someone was good at football, that they're good at going on to do anything else is... I mean, Cameron Ling was a great footballer. Is he a great special quote? Michael Jordan was the greatest ever basketballer. He's a terrible owner.
Yeah.
Derek Jeter was one of the great baseball players for the Yankees. Owns the Marlins in Miami. Is shocking as an owner. I reckon it barely ever flows that someone, because you're good at footy, you're good at other parts of life.
Of recent times, I think the only one that looks like making that transition as being a very good footballer and then a good something else is Jimmy Bartell at the moment.
As a commentator,
or maybe
Lee Matthews
director.
is the great example of someone who's gone on to be a great coach and great footballer, and done all those. But it's rare, isn't it?
And as coaches, quite often the best coaches are the guys who weren't your superstars. And I reckon that's in David Teague's corner, because Teague would be the first to say, mate, I didn't even play 100 games, I don't think. I was no superstar.
Well, and then Clarko wasn't the greatest player of all time or anything, Sheedy wasn't, and, some of these were good, but, or decent, but they
the
were.
superstars, not necessarily.
Well, Buckley said that. He took forever to get used to
Malcolm
not everyone's going to play like him.
I mean, he was well regarded at Geelong, but he never won a flag.
It can happen, but it doesn't, always lead it on. But, Blight went on to Adelaide.
Yeah, that's true.
To success. But, it doesn't, and he was unlucky not to probably win one at Geelong. Yeah. Well, not, it was pretty close.
Was he unlucky not to win one at St Kilda? Hey, just while you mentioned Carlton, before we get off the footy.
Yeah.
Game a couple of weeks ago, Melbourne-Carlton at the MCG. I was at this game.
Yeah.
And I heard something from a Melbourne supporter in the members, which I've never heard before, and I probably won't hear again. I heard this guy go, "It's Sam Frost is in all-Australian form." No, he's going okay.
Was he being serious?
Yeah, he was serious. And his mate next to him going, he's been good.
Was it his dad?
And I'll just tell you one other thing that I looked into.
Yeah.
At that game, at half-time, Carlton were using T-shirt cannons on the Hello Turf.
You told
me,
yeah.
They were firing T-shirts into the air. And they feeding them. They go up a long way out of one of these cannons. Yeah. And your supporters had to catch them in a bucket or something.
And we found out how they got around the harsh anti-T-shirt.
Because somebody had told us early on that they're banned, they're illegal in Victoria.
Yeah, well, they are, a lot of them. So unless these are different models or something.
Yesterday, I actually contacted Martin Pakula, who is the former Attorney General of Victoria, and asked him what is the law.
Is he not still Attorney General?
No, he's not Attorney General. He's the Minister for Racing and something else now.
You get shifted, did he?
Yeah. But I said, what is the actual law on T-shirt cannons at AFL clubs? Yeah. And his quick response goes, sorry, don't know.
Right.
So, that's why you're not Attorney General anymore. But anyway. But
I like how you can reach out to a government minister on the legality of T-shirt cannons.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's Victorian police have banned them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Well, they're just enacting the legislation.
Yeah, they described as they're too dangerous to be operated without a licence.
They have them as Category E firearms from memory.
And you know what? Shotguns, bazookas and mortars are also in that category.
Oh, it's mad.
So, but Carlton, it just shows the complete contempt they hold the laws of Victoria by firing them on the MCG.
Well, they used to ignore the salary cap rules, so it doesn't surprise me. I think the biggest endorsement of Teague as Carlton coach is that the board, with Chris Judd's comments and just generally, is the board did not select him. He stepped in because Bolton got sacked.
Yeah.
Not being chosen by the Carlton board is the greatest endorsement a person can have to actually be a good coach, because the board have got every decision wrong for 20 years in appointing coaches at Carlton. And if you're a Carlton supporter, you should be pleading with the board to ignore its judgment, do the opposite, and just appoint Teague.
Do the George Costanza.
Well, they totally should. Yeah. I mean, I've said this about Melbourne before, but I think Carlton in the last 20 years have matched Melbourne for awfulness. They're both awful.
Yeah, true.
They should, doing the total polar opposite of what you would normally do is incredibly sensible.
And the other positive thing for Teague and the Carlton was if he does become a success, and let's say takes Carlton to either the finals or knocking on the door next year.
Yeah.
Well, the board can then, it's a win-win or a no-loss situation for the board.
Yeah.
You know.
Drew Duval wrote in, on a scale of 1 to Malthouse, how badly do you expect Carlton to bugger up their choice of senior coach?
Well, that just goes back to what you're saying is if you...
I like how Malthouse is now the gold standard of terribleness.
So at what point, maybe the responsibility for selecting the coach should be taken away from the Carlton board.
Well, I think
I don't know who
it's self-harm.
Yeah.
But don't you think, when you look at it, I mean, objectively, I look at it and go, if you're not going, Teague has obviously got the players not only playing well, but really want him to. Cripps has said they love playing under him and all this, right? So if you're going to not appoint him, who are you going to have that's so spectacular? Now, one thing that gets thrown around is Brad Scott. I'm like, you do not move Teague on with his popularity and results with the players to bring in Brad Scott.
No.
Now,
who else is there?
Well, Paul Roos is the one that everyone keeps saying has been locked in by Carlton. That's the rumour. Yeah, Paul Roos and with Michael Voss as actual coach, and Paul Roos is like overseeing it.
Director of coaching or something.
And
it just all depends how much money they've got to spend.
I think money's not a problem for Carlton.
Money's never a problem for Paul Roos either, let me tell you. So.
But I mean, I kind of look at it and, I mean, you want to have a pretty amazing alternative.
Yeah,
I can understand Paul Roos as someone they look at and go, this would be a great sell, and and all that. So I kind of get that a little bit, but I look at it and go, Teague, he's doing pretty well. So you don't,
he's done nothing wrong so far.
Move like there's not a bunch of senior coaches out there that you go.
Clarkson? No, I mean sure if they could get Clarkson over.
Clarkson's not going.
Fine, but he's not going anywhere.
I love that. I wrote a comment about that. Everyone just goes, "Oh, get Clarkson."
Yeah,
like. And I equated it to, it's like if you suddenly were single, if you got dumped, me coming up to you and going, you should go out with Miranda Kerr.
Yeah, I should.
Like, it's
Scarlett Johansson.
How's that helpful to anyone?
What chance have you got?
But how many people wrote columns going, Carlton should do everything to get Alistair Clarkson?
What can you do? I mean, Clarkson, his price is now, $5 million a year,
Yeah. And Hawthorn are not like years away from being back on.
Nah.
Even now
they'll get some. They can get.
They've improved throughout the year, and now getting off footy now and getting to a huge weekend in sport. I know people always say that, but it was a crazy night of sport. Kept a lot of us up. Well, first we should mention Australia were abysmal against England.
Yeah, they were.
The week before,
game,
and it was just
shocking.
Terrible.
The batting was terrible.
How often is our side, when it comes key moments, they just collapse?
Oh, they've been doing it for the last few years. I reckon the first few weeks of the World Cup was a bit of a false start for Australia. Everyone's going, we're back and we'll go all the way.
Yeah.
But they were never far away from a a complete collapse, as you say.
No, and like
they
Warner,
kept
when
for
it
the semi-final.
counted, was nowhere.
Yeah,
Smith, in fairness, hung around.
yeah.
But the rest of them, and
Finch
God,
went early.
Michael Clark's commentary.
Oh,
I mean, just the standout of the World Cup in terms of awfulness. When he said at one point when we were, I think, we were down like, I can't remember what it was, 5 for something terrible. He said, not the start the Australians would have wanted.
thanks, Clark.
Thanks, Clarky.
Yeah.
And then a bit later, when everyone had basically gone out except for Smith, he's like, I think Smith has been the pick of the batters today. I mean,
Foxtel have to introduce a mute Clark button to your remote
how
control.
he keeps getting jobs is just beyond me. We then had the Cricket World Cup final. Controversial. England claimed its maiden World Cup title. # not my World Cup champions. They beat New Zealand at Lords. A lot of people saying it was one of the greatest of all time and one of the most exciting games ever. And in a way it was. It went right. It was tied at the end of the 50 over or the 100 overs, and then they had to do 2 super overs where we had all kinds of bizarre things
Now explain to
happening.
me, what is a super over compared to just an extra over?
Oh, well, what it is...
Is it to do with field placements and
No, you
like
both get a... both teams pick 3 batsmen and 1 bowler to take part.
All right.
And the team batting, one team bats first, and another team bats next.
Right.
See who scores the most in each over.
Yep.
And then at the end of that over, whoever scored the most runs is the winner. Now, what happened is through a variety of crazy outcomes, including marginal wides and run-outs and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
We ended up with the first one finishing in a draw and the second one, super over, finishing in a draw too. So you've had the 50 overs each, draw, another super over, draw, another over, draw, and then it's decided then by an obscure rule which counts back who had the most boundaries during the match toward it to cricket. I mean, it is just the other week on this podcast I said the worst way to end a sporting tournament is a penalty kick shootout in soccer.
Yeah.
This is even worse because
this is just ridiculous.
You could easily play super overs until there's a winner. Because you're just not going to get...
What's another 10 minutes?
You could do another 10 overs and the players can get... They do tests. Like, these players play tests. It's not like playing a soccer game where you suddenly worry everyone's going to get injured or whatever. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's...
Oh, no, I agree. It was a terrible way to finish. I mean, this is why... It was exciting and all that, but it wasn't one of the greatest cricket match of all time, as a few people are saying. For 2 reasons. One, it wasn't a test. And B, just this idiotic, most number of boundaries.
Oh, the ending, I mean, anything England wins ruins it.
It's tainted anyhow, but
But the way it ended is just, I mean, I like saying this especially to annoy, one, just pure sour grapes, but also to annoy English people. It's a tainted victory. Really, the only team that's won the World Cup most recently is still Australia. But if you're in New Zealand, if this happened to us or vice versa to England, they would be everyone would be furious. It is the stupidest rule. I mean, the ICC. I mean, why would you go? Oh, it might go on for a few extra overs. Let's bring in this stupid rule. Like, why would you? Like, imagine.
It just makes no sense.
But even a commercial thing, like the ratings at that point would have been through the roof. If there had been another 4 or 5 tied super overs.
Yeah, it would have been the highest rating cricket match of all time.
Yeah, like imagine if this had finished properly with a 6 or a run or something, one of the teams won, fair and square off their own abilities, not looking back, then that would make way more sense, surely.
Yeah. So do you think the ICC regretted getting Steve Hocking in to oversee that?
We did have a few questions around that. So anyway, amazing outcome. I just couldn't believe it. Like it was...
Yeah, it was a stand. And I mean, how stiff to be when you're a fieldsman to take a ping at the stumps. It hits a diving batsman's bat and goes for 4 overthrows.
Well, but then that's now been challenged that when the throw came from the fielder, the batsman hadn't crossed, so it shouldn't have been 6 runs, it should have been 5, which is another reason people say England shouldn't have won.
Shouldn't have won, yeah.
Any reasons where we can put forward why England shouldn't have won, I'm all for.
Stokes is a convicted criminal?
The fact they're all from other countries. Absolutely bizarre like scenes in the end. You know that it's bad when the rule that it resulted. This just shows you the absurdity of cricket. Yeah. Don't you think we needed, like with all sports administrations, we need someone appointed to them who's just the common sense person?
Yeah.
Which is a role that they sorely lack, all of them.
Yeah, just common sense. You're right. In all sports, whether it's making the rules, interpreting the rules, talking about the umpiring,
making
or refereeing,
just differences in things.
Just generally speaking, the phrase common sense should be used at every level, and it's not.
Well, the rule that decided this was just to give you a sense of how ridiculous everything. It set out in paragraph 13 in Appendix F.
Right, of course.
Of the ICC laws concerning super overs. It's just, I draw your attention to paragraph 13 in Appendix F.
Okay, Your Honour. Thanks.
Phil K wrote in, will the Kiwis drop their angst about underarm now they have overthrow, which took away a far bigger prize than a WSC final?
Well, World Series championship. I mean, it's all very well us bagging the English, but there is some faint
joy
that New Zealand got beaten badly as well. New Zealand were robbed
by technicality and the rules again.
Yeah, I quite like that.
We would have liked an outcome where just everyone's unhappy. Yeah. If we can't be happy, they can't be happy. Daniel Fernley wrote, instead of most boundaries, should the Cricket World Cup have been awarded to the team with more players from a basketball background? I like that.
Were there many?
They could have had a live ladder as it went on too. Justin of Earlwood wrote...
Justin of Earlwood's got tickets on himself.
England won a World Cup without actually winning. Not a question as such, but Melbourne and Carlton supporters should take hope. We had Brent Petrie wrote in, is it true the AFL score review system has confirmed Stokes didn't deflect the ball?
Well, didn't they have a GoPro attached to the stump?
It's just Jared Wilson wrote in, are the rumours true that Steve Hocking wants to decide a drawn grand final with a game of Twister? I think that was Simon Lethlean's idea, actually. Angus wrote in, if the AFL grand final ends up being a draw and then after extra time it's still a draw, do England win?
Well, it's funny to say, because I was listening to Gil McLaughlin this morning. He was talking to Jared Waitley on SEN.
Right.
And he was explaining...
How did that go?
It was the usual sort of deflection and I'm not responsible for anything.
Yeah.
But he did explain what would happen in the case of the AFL Grand Final, which is no great surprise that there's 2 5-minute periods in the case of a draw without time on, and then it becomes the golden point if it's still a draw,
right? Which
is just like first score wins, basically. Which I think is, when you use the word common sense, is not a bad way to do it.
No, because
except
also
the fact that he's tried to explain the reason they're doing it that way is for transparency, which would be the first decision they've ever made in the eyes of transparency.
The minute anyone mentions transparency, I'm instantly suspicious of what they're trying to cover up.
It's a cover up. Yes. It's like governments. Whenever a newly elected politician says, I'm going to represent all Australians. No, you're not.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
I did also notice with McLaughlin on Gerald's program this morning. Yeah. I read some of the quotes from it, and McLaughlin refused to concede that there had been strategic mistakes made with the setting up of the Gold Coast Suns.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's what I say. It was just the usual deflection and never admit anything.
And so he said, they've had bad luck.
Yeah, he said, how much bad luck have they had?
What bad luck? Yeah. What did he cite, though, as bad luck?
Injuries this year and losing players. Well, the losing of all the players, that's not bad luck.
No, it's bad management.
It's bad management. and a bad club, you know.
And terribly set up by the AFL. Like
Yeah.
they weren't in proper facilities for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
By that point, it was kind of well established that
It was run by knuckleheads in the early day. They've got Mark Evans and some good operators in there now.
But their board had always been terrible. I mean, their
Yeah.
first chairman came out and said early on, I think in like year 2 or 3, we'll win a premiership in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was just
Taken out of context.
patently ridiculous. Then they had Tony Cochrane come in, and who was former editor of the V8 Supercars, who has just said the dumbest things you could imagine over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, now they're like going, oh, it's all been bad luck. It's like, no, it's been, I mean, and they appointed, I mean, was it bad luck appointing Rodney Eade? I mean, we all knew
It's
that
never
was
bad luck.
we all knew
appointing Rodney
we
Eade.
knew that was a terrible decision.
Yeah.
Not in hindsight.
No.
Everyone I spoke to, some people I spoke to who'd been coached by him at AFL level, were like, oh my God, have they just never done any due diligence, this board?
I spoke to a couple of former Swans players
Yeah.
being coached by Rocket, and he's, you know, and look, I've met him a few times through the media, and he's a terrific bloke. But
Unless you've been coached by him.
yeah, and as these players say, he's a ripping bloke off the field, but he's the only coach I've ever known or had who gets white line fever. Players do, but he as a coach does, and he becomes a completely different
but he
animal.
was just known for just tearing strips off
Yeah.
people and just destroying players' confidence.
yeah.
Like, you know, I mean...
they reckon, you know, he could give the biggest burst of any coach anyone's ever seen.
And so you send him up there with young players to develop.
Yeah.
I mean, just
18-year-olds who got,
absolutely ridiculous. Like, you know, and now Shuey Dew looks like he's about to die all the time.
Yeah.
Like he just looked like...
He looks like he's eaten Rodney Eade.
But he does also looks like a man that it's all gotten to him.
Yeah.
Because you can't see...
He's carrying the world on his shoulders.
I also reckon the idea of giving him priority picks, and I said this about like my own club, so it's not like kicking Gold Coast. When Melbourne got all those priority picks in the early 2000s and a bit later, the club was not set up to accept them. All it did was ruin some of the brightest talents in the country that now are all mocked as, like there's Lucas Cook and Morton and all this, which everyone now like goes, well, they were all busts.
Yeah.
But you kind of go, were they all going to be busts? Like if they had gone to Hawthorn or Geelong or even Sydney or one of the clubs with a really good development facilities and good culture and all that, would they have been busts? And I'd argue that they wouldn't have all been busts.
No.
Like that was, and I like the idea of sending young kids up to the Gold Coast. I just think it's like child abuse.
and their answer to a lot of that is to say, yeah, but look at making them sign for 2 or 3 years these new recruits. I mean, well, that doesn't solve the problem.
No, but they need they need. I reckon they need way more money for development retention. Like, give them a COLA retention allowance, but get them more money for assistant coaches. Get all that side of it right. You know, like at the moment that they're not even spending up to they're not even anywhere near spending like the cap of off-field development.
Right.
Like every other club blows them out of the water, pretty much. You know, like, and GWS are not. I think GWS are only different in that they've managed to manage on-field fairly well and be fairly successful.
And they've managed to keep.
But if they bomb away too, like they've retained a bit because they've had on-field success. But I mean, but they're not like motoring in every other area,
No.
you know. So I just think it's going to be like really interesting. Now, the other thing that happened the cricket was on because, of course, in England they schedule the Cricket World Cup Grand Final.
At the same time as the
Wimbledon
men's Wimbledon
final. We'd had the women's the night before where
blink and you miss it, yeah.
Which was the opposite of the men's one, where Halep just crushed Serena Williams in a 6-2, 6-2 victory, which was literally...
Serena was surprisingly humble in defeat, too.
Yeah, I flipped around a few times, like watching it and a few other things. And I flicked back and it was like, this is almost over. It was like barely had time.
She looked to me, Halep, I mean, I watched most of this match, and that she just walked out there with, that I got nothing to lose attitude. I'm just going to go for every shot. And she did. And everyone went in.
Also, Serena had a lot of unforced errors.
Yeah.
Like she looked off.
Yeah.
the interesting thing about it, though, is there was a survey done by YouGov in UK, and 12% of men were confident they could face up to Serena Williams and win a point in a game against her.
Yeah. That point would surely have to be a double fault.
Someone said, Shane's asked, how many points could you, Serge, take off Serena Williams?
Oh, Shane, I think when you say how many points, you mean how many sets.
I don't know. Like, people made out that guys are idiots, but I was actually quite impressed that it was only 12% of blokes.
Yeah.
I expect.
I suppose. Give me a bet, Serena. I'll just hit it straight down the line.
I could win a point of anyone, whether it's a man, woman, or anyone. Whether they've won a game, whether they've even played tennis before, I could lose to them. The men's final between Djokovic and Federer was much like the World Cup final, although with a less
one for the ages.
A less silly ending was one for the ages. It had a new rule as well, which was. The rule change they had, it went on, the final set went for more than 2 hours on its own, was decided in a tiebreaker after the games were locked at 12 all, so it didn't just continue on forever.
I don't like this either. I would,
You would have liked them to just keep playing normal...
Yeah, I mean, again, even if it went for another hour even, and it was 23...
You say this as someone not
21.
the one playing it.
Yeah, I know, but then again, that just goes to show you're watching the two arguably greatest players of all time.
Yeah. They played for just 3 minutes off 5 hours.
Yeah.
So 4 hours and 57 minutes. Djokovic won 7-6 with the tiebreaker being 7-5. 1-6. That was an interesting set. That was the sort of anomaly. Then 7-6 with a 7-4 tiebreaker. 4-6. Then 13-12 with a 7-3 tiebreaker to end that. Absolutely just bonkers game, like just absolutely amazing. So it was that was one of the weekends where you go, this is why I love sport.
Yeah, exactly.
Despite the ICC ruining it.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it was one of those weekends where I feel sorry for people who, and I know a few blokes like this go, nah, hate sport. Sport's a waste of time.
Yeah.
No. Talking to you is a waste of time. No.
Do you want to name them at the moment, who these people are?
No, one of them is my accountant.
Chris L wrote...
And it's tax time.
If 32-year-old Djokovic and 37-year-old Federer can play off in the Wimbledon final, does that mean there's hope that 36-year-old me can one day soon walk to the local shops and back without needing to stop for a breather? It's very specific. Probably. It doesn't sound good, Chris.
Yeah.
You might want to go see a doctor.
At 36, you should be able to get that done, I would suggest.
Unless he's probably walking to the shops to get a pack of darts. That's probably his problem. It is amazing to me. I mean, it's been mentioned, I think Federer brought it up about how bad the next generation has been. But you look at Djokovic, Nadal, Federer.
Yeah.
You had this period after Rod Laver, and there's been great tennis players, but suddenly this era of men with those three players, suddenly having all getting up there with huge amounts of Grand Slam wins. Yeah. It's partly speaks of the greatness of the three players, but it seems to also point a little bit to the players of the generation sort of below and stuff who've not come on. And Federer, no less than Federer himself, is basically, when asked about the longevity of him and Djokovic and Nadal, said, well, the next generation haven't come on.
I mean, it's a fair point. You can't say that those three players, that no one else can challenge them, but they really haven't. I mean, there's been fly-by-nighters and guys who have popped up and have won a Grand Slam or won maybe a couple of Grand Slams, but none of them have been there. It's a bit like when it was back with Borg, McEnroe, and Jimmy Connors, these guys, and Stefan Edberg. There was back then there was probably at least half a dozen great players.
Yeah.
Now, as you say, there's these three, and there's who's coming next? Who is coming next? What, Bernard Tomic?
Yeah.
No, that's a very good point.
I was, it has been, it's bizarre this how no one else has come along. No. Players that we thought were going to be the next step, they just haven't. So, which I find really weird. The thing I was, while we're talking about amazing games, one thing, if you've caught any of the Netball World Cup, been an absolute...
Which I haven't, but
I watched a bit. I watched a
I'm
few of these games.
I like netball. I'm a fan of
But
netball.
I keep tuning in to watch the Diamonds and Australia's team, and I'm not alone in this, and Lisa Alexander, who's the Australian coach, has brought up this, is the Netball World Cup at the moment, it has way too many teams in it. It's got 16 teams, and the quality is just, in the early rounds, is just not there. So Australia so far, they thumped Sri Lanka 99-24.
And in netball, that is a dead set.
Last night, which I watched a bit of, they beat Barbados, that powerhouse, 91-22. They've also played so far Northern Ireland, Zimbabwe as well. And if you take their averages over, not including, I haven't done the maths for Barbados result, but it will be probably even higher. They're averaging 77-30 in their wins over Northern Ireland, Zimbabwe, and Sri Lanka.
So at what point do they run into a bit of opposition?
Well, now it goes through to they now go through to the
who are the other
semis.
Top teams? I mean, it's always New Zealand.
New Zealand and England.
And England, yeah.
Are the major other ones that are going to be the challenge. I think New Zealand and England have gotten really quite good. It used to be Australia were probably a step above all of them. So Alexander has said there's just way too many teams. She just said there's way too many. It's been like it's been. They also play 8 tests in 10 days, which Alexander said is unnecessarily intense.
Well, I don't know much about the administration of netball, but it sounds to me like...
That surprises me.
Like so many other sports, the administrators, they just put on too many matches, too many teams, purely to make more money for everyone, And I guarantee the girls in the team aren't seeing much of it.
No, but also
just
just...
extra cash.
I mean, while, yes, there's a lot of tests in 10 days, I mean, these have been almost like light training runs.
Yeah.
I mean, the way they've... I mean, I was watching the game last night. I didn't watch all of it because about 10 minutes in, you knew we were going to absolutely annihilate them. And then after a while, I was like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed.
And I want to see what Chris Judd has to say on
I want to see Chris Judd justify his comments. Nick C has written our final question for the day. I'm heading to Las Vegas soon. Can Serge tell me which are the best bars to frequent?
Bars in Vegas. Let me think. If you go to Aria, which is one of the big casinos on the Strip, on the first floor there's a great pink bar there.
Really?
Everything's pink and there's a nice piano in the middle. It's a very good bar. My favourite one, though, if you go...
How long since you've been to Vegas?
Oh, about 5 years.
Right.
If you go down the road, in the part of the Flamingo Hotel, there's Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. And there's a great bar that's on the second floor, and it's an open deck bar that looks out over the Strip. So it gets pretty hot about this time of year. But we found when we were there, there's a great bartender there. He would give you the super, super cold beers, and then he would spray you with this fine mist just before you drank it.
I think that's mace.
Pepper spray.
They're trying to get you to leave, but your tolerance to foreign chemicals is so high, you thought it was a lovely gesture.
Yeah. Well, look, Nick, really, any bar in Vegas can be a good bar. You're not going to.
It's been so long since I have been to Vegas. Yeah. I've been there once, I think, and would have been like 2003 or something.
Right.
So like long time ago now. But I remember it was so long ago that there was a Coyote Ugly theme bar.
Oh, there was too.
And I think it's closed down. Someone told me since.
Yeah,
but there was literally...
that was at the Hard Rock Casino.
And they would get up on the bar and dance like they'd play Leanne Rimes' Can't Fight the Moonlight, and they would spray everyone give you shots and everything. Yeah. It was just absolute chaos.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Maybe it's time for that to come back.
Maybe we should do a live podcast in Vegas.
From Vegas. Now you're talking. We'll do it down in Fremont Street, down in the old part of Vegas.
If you could do live podcasts anywhere in the world, where would you do it?
Oh,
this is really just where would you go, but where would be a fun place to go?
I don't know, the Royal Albert Hall. Do you think?
It's just Madison Square Garden.
Madison Square Garden.
I mean, I don't know if the capacity might not be big enough.
Oh,
but
the
anyway.
Colosseum, the Acropolis.
The Colosseum. We got to award a copy of the book, my second book, A Sporting Chance, to someone. I was going to give it to Brent Petrie. Is it true the AFL score review system has confirmed Stokes didn't deflect the ball?
Yeah, I second that.
Anything that bags the AFL score review process, I'm very keen on.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week. So
We will indeed.
Which see if we've lost any other coaches by then. We'll see you then.